I'm not going to bother to stop the recording and start it again. We'll just let it run.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we'll get started right at noon, maybe 12:01, depending on how many people are still coming in.
Kelly, are you coming to us from DC today, or?
I am. Yes, I'm in the DC office.
It's the hottest day of the summer here today. I think we're first day over 100 maybe. Is it the same there?
Yes, about 100 here, and it's only going to cool down to like 83 this evening.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's ghastly.
Couple last day. Supposedly by the weekend it'll be more seasonable, so for that one last burst here.
I'm from the West Coast, and it gets hotter temperature wise, but we don't have the humidity.
Yeah.
So it's completely different feeling. And then we get massive shifts down in the evening. So, it'll drop 40 degrees overnight. So I've never experienced sustained heat like this until I moved to the East Coast.
Yeah, I'm from Michigan originally, so we moved
Oh
to DC,
boy.
came down here. Yep, that was a similar kind of mindset. Been here a while, I'm used to it now, but yeah.
How'd you end up in North Carolina?
I was following the opportunity. I thought NCDOT would be a great place to. I was a professor for a long time, so to work with them for many years, and then came to work for these guys. But yeah, had coming out of PhD school, I had two offers, and I thought this was the more opportunity here, and that has proven to be true.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what are we, the second largest DOT in the country? Not the second largest state, but we own all the roads, so it's kind of a good place to work.
Yes. On fewer jurisdictional issues.
That's for sure. We can still get things done,
Yeah. When I was at Oregon DOT, there's a road that goes into Portland, and nobody really knew who owned it. We were in a fight with the city and the county over who had responsibility for maintaining it. Just a nightmare.
I'm sure we still have a few of those, but probably fewer than most.
Yeah.
So you want to wait a minute, or do you want to go ahead and go?
No, let's roll, Andy.
All right, let's roll. Sounds good. All righty, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another of our series in Conversations in Transportation. Thanks for everybody who was able to attend. I know we scheduled this. We apologize for that, but we're happy you were able to make it here with us. This is our fourth session of 2023. Again, we're happy to have Dr. Hummer as well as Ali from ASHO. I'll turn it over to Dr. Hummer here in a minute. I do have the same announcements as I always have. If you've attended these in the past, it's the exact same thing as usual. We'll send out the PDH information, evaluation forms, and all that good stuff later this afternoon. And if you have questions along the way, please put them in the Q&A function here in Zoom. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there'll be a little button with a couple of speech bubbles. It says Q&A. That's where you can submit our questions. That way we can keep track of what we've answered and what we haven't. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Hummer.
Great, Andy, thank you. And yes, let me welcome everybody to this rescheduled session. So we've got a fine attendance today. Appreciate that. Even with the rescheduling, you all are terrific. Thanks to Andy, and thanks to our sponsors. That's the Strategic Initiative Council and the Young Members Council. So Adam and Ty and your groups, we really appreciate it. Thanks to Nixite, our diamond and gold sponsor companies who really make everything we do at Nixite possible. Really appreciate that. Today we're talking about connected and automated vehicles with Ali Lohman. Allie is the Mobility Program Manager for AASHTO, that's the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. She focuses on emerging mobility areas, including connected and automated vehicles, uncrewed aerial systems, advanced air mobility, shared mobility, and electric vehicles. That's all the good stuff. In addition, she supports the Committee on Transportation System Operation and the Committee on Knowledge Management. Allie previously worked for the Oregon DOT as an Operations and Policy Analyst. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science and history from Yale University. Allie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's start with some definitions. Connected automated vehicles, I think I know what those are. People listening probably think they know, but let's be sure on that right from the beginning. So quick definition of a connected vehicle.
Yeah, a connected vehicle is a vehicle that communicates with other nearby devices. So where we see this most often from the perspective of infrastructure owner operators is a vehicle that can exchange information with roadside infrastructure. So for example, the vehicle could communicate to the roadside infrastructure that it is losing traction in a certain area of the road. So then we know to send maintenance teams out there. Or the infrastructure could communicate to the vehicle. They could send an alert saying, oh, there's a work zone up ahead and you need to get into a different lane.
And then an automated vehicle, quick definition of that.
Yeah, an automated vehicle is a vehicle that can perform all or part of the driving task itself. So there's kind of a range of driver assistance technologies all the way up to vehicles that are what we would colloquially call self-driving.
That's the 0 to 5 scale that we've probably heard about, right?
Yes, there's a 0 to 5 scale that the International Society of Automotive Engineers came up with to describe the different kind of stages of automation. So you get on one end of that range 0, which is my first car, a 1990 Mitsubishi Mirage that didn't even have automatic locks. And then you have level 1, which has some driver assistance technology. It's a vehicle that might warn you if you depart your lane, for example, or even nudge you back into your lane. Level 2 is more advanced driver assistance technology. So things like adaptive cruise control. So your vehicle senses the vehicle in front of you and automatically speeds up and slows down, or can even center you in the lane by sensing where the lane markings are. Level 3 is complicated. Level 3 is a vehicle that can drive itself in a very narrow range of circumstances, but the human driver has to be ready as a fallback in case the vehicle encounters conditions that are outside where it was designed to drive itself, or if the technology encounters an issue. And then the human would be alerted and they'd need to take over driving. That transition from the human driver to the automated system and vice versa is the tricky piece there. Level 4 is a vehicle that can completely drive itself. There's no need for human oversight, but there may be some limitations on where it can drive itself. So it might only have detailed mapping information for one city or region, or it might only be able to do that on like highways rather than in complex downtown areas. And then level 5 is the Holy Grail. That's a vehicle that can drive itself anywhere that a human being could drive a vehicle.
Good. Does an automated vehicle have to be connected?
No. So the two technologies are being developed in parallel. There is an expectation on the part of a lot of transportation policy folks that ultimately we will see vehicles that are both connected and automated, that there's a nice synergy there between the goals of those two technologies. But what we're told by automated vehicle developers is that automated vehicles should be able to operate without connected vehicle technology. The CV technology could enhance the performance, but it's not required.
So for the rest of this hour, if we say CAV or AV, though, that's pretty synonymous. I mean, we expect AVs to be able to make connection if they want to or need to out in the future, right?
I expect we will eventually see connected and automated vehicles.
Okay, good deal. If my goal as a consumer was to go out and buy the vehicle right now at the highest number on that scale, is it level 3 right now?
So right now, the highest level you could buy is level 2.
2.
There are pretty advanced level 2 vehicles out there, but manufacturers are still expecting that the human driver is monitoring the surroundings for any potential danger. They've got their eyes on the road, they've got their hands on the wheel. So you can't buy a vehicle right now that won't beep at you. You take your hands off the wheel. That said, Mercedes-Benz at the end of this year will start offering a vehicle in the United States that is certified level 3. So you could take your hands off the wheel. You still need to be ready to take over if the vehicle alerts you that it needs you to do that. But in some scenarios, specifically scenarios on highways going less than 40 miles an hour. So for most of us, that stuff that only happens during like rush hour traffic. You in California and Nevada could buy a vehicle that has level 3 technology.
Cool, good. Progress continues. And there's experiments underway. We'll get into this maybe a little bit later, but experiments underway, for instance, in California again, with level 4 vehicles, right? But nobody's at level 5 experimentally on US roads right now. Is that right?
No, I would say there is no one even working on level 5 anywhere in the world. What we're all trying to master right now is level 4, which, those are vehicles that completely drive themselves. There's no need for a human driver. You could take the wheel out, kind of vehicles, but they might not be able to drive absolutely everywhere we can drive. So like dirt roads with no markings, those could be a challenge. Really adverse weather conditions, maybe outside of what we call the operational design domain.
And then one more tidbit on definition here. CAVs out in the future are going to be electric powered, right? Nobody's really, a gas powered CAV doesn't make sense to me anyway. Is that?
Well, I think it's around 60% of the automated vehicles that are being piloted on roads today are electric, and then about 20% more are hybrid, which leaves about 20% that are internal combustion engine vehicles. There's nothing about an automated vehicle that necessarily requires that it be electric. There are some things that could make it easier because an electric vehicle, they're simpler, which makes it easier for the computer. They don't require as much maintenance, so you're less likely to need a human to get out of the vehicle and fix something on the side of the road. And also an electric motor takes up less space, so you have more space for all of your onboard computer technology that allows for self-driving. On the other hand, there are some concerns that the amount of computing power required for an automated vehicle to drive itself is not insignificant, and it could be a real draw on an electric battery capacity.
Oh. Okay. Interesting. That would be, yeah, that'd be bad if we further reduce the range of the electric vehicle. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Um, are barring some catastrophe, war, famine, or new virus or something, CVs are inevitable in your opinion? I mean, we will get to level 4 and eventually to level 5.
I'm not sure about level 5. I think there are some scenarios where computers will always struggle. I do think we will reach level 4, but I think it will be much slower than we were originally told. So like when I started working in this field in 2016, everyone was saying, oh, there'll be automated vehicles on the roads everywhere by 2018. It's now 2023. And we do have these fascinating pilots of, self-driving vehicles going on in places like Chandler, Arizona, and San Francisco. But they are still what I would call intended level 4. They haven't actually achieved level 4 because they still pretty routinely encounter scenarios in which the vehicles don't know what to do and they have to stop and a rescue crew has to come out and fix the situation.
And hopefully recode new software, and next time
Yes.
we're in that situation, we know what to do, right? So
Yes.
hopefully improving, but okay, I understand. I used to have a slide in my CV presentation that said, welcome to New Year's Day 2037, the year that CVs take over. I don't know that you got a favorite year that you're pointing to at this point, or
Oh, anything I say will turn out to be wrong.
yeah, they are being recorded, right?
I think the tricky part of this is that we talk about automated vehicles as though they're capable of making decisions. That's not actually what's happening. What we've done is created software that's capable of incredible amounts of pattern recognition. And then when it recognizes X, it does Y. What's more complicated than that, it's like recognizing like F through X and then it does Y. But it's still only capable of reacting to things it's been programmed to react to. So I don't know about you, but I've been driving about 12 years. I'm going to date myself. And I have definitely encountered things on the road that were startling and bizarre. It's impossible to predict every single scenario that a vehicle could encounter. And unless we somehow manage to hit what we call like sci-fi AI, where the computer's genuinely capable of like generating new thoughts, reasoning, there will always be some scenarios that the vehicles are not programmed to respond to. Now, there are lots of things you can do to reduce potential adverse outcomes when that happens. The vehicles are usually programmed to revert to like slowing down and stopping on the side of the road. But it's still a question of when we'll hit the point that those scenarios the vehicle's not been programmed for are small enough that we think it's safe enough to have these operating widespread.
Fair enough. Is that, in your mind, is that the major barrier to widespread adoption? It's the sort of computing algorithm software side of things. Is that the barrier?
I think that is the major. I don't want to call it a barrier. It's the challenge that hasn't been addressed yet. So I mean, there are still policy questions related to automated vehicles that we'll need to work out, and there's public acceptance questions. But I think the real issue is that it's that last tiny percentage of scenarios vehicles could encounter that we can't program them to respond to.
The flip side of that is to say, if it's really technical is the main challenge,
Yes.
then, and our policy, but they're lesser challenge, I guess. Let me ask a better question. Could the US federal government stop CAV adoption even if it wanted to?
Oh. Well, I mean, Congress could pass a law tomorrow banning all automated driving systems,
Mhm.
but I don't think they will. On the bureaucracy side, I don't foresee that happening. I mean, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has recall power. So if automated driving systems had been implicated in crashes or were causing unsafe scenarios, NHTSA could recall those vehicles. And I suppose they could pass or create regulations like federal motor vehicle safety standards that effectively prevent the deployment of automated vehicles. I think all of that is unlikely.
Good. And I guess a follow-up to that would be, sort of the special interest groups. I mean, CAVs, there'll be winners and losers economically, socially. Some of the losers banded together and started campaigning against, let's take truck drivers, for instance. That's going to be a profession that probably will be in decline with CAV if the truck driver unions all of a sudden came out strongly against. Do you think they could stop it?
I think that they have effectively delayed passage of legislation at the state level that addresses automated vehicles in multiple cases already. I don't know that they could permanently prevent the deployment of automated vehicles, especially if we get more data that demonstrates that automated vehicles genuinely are safer than human drivers. That's been asserted by many people in this field for a very long time, but we don't actually have enough information to prove it yet. And of course, the technology is still in development. But if we knew that they were safer than human drivers on average, I don't think that even the truck unions would be able to prevent deployment.
The cruise experiment in San Francisco is one that comes to mind, that they've sent folks here to talk at conferences in North Carolina. And if I remember right, made the claim that their vehicles are already safer than human drivers on the streets of San Francisco. So just to cite one example, sounds like you're not quite there yet on those claims.
So there hasn't been any independent study done that demonstrates that they're safer. We have a lot of manufacturers claiming that they are. And then you get these little data points, like the California releases the number of miles driven by an automated vehicle developer and the number of disengagements per miles driven. Those are not reliable for decision making, in my opinion, because in some cases you want to see a high number of disengagements where the automated driving system has said, oh, I don't know what to do, human takeover. Because that means that the developers are deliberately seeking out scenarios where they're testing the capabilities of their system. You also definitely saw some automated vehicle developers driving a lot of easy miles to bump their numbers because they knew people were misinterpreting the disengagements per mile number that California releases. So I don't think we in the public sector, at least, have the data yet to demonstrate whether or not automated vehicles currently are safer than human drivers.
Fair enough. Good. Any other big challenges that you see that we haven't mentioned yet? I could prompt a couple that I've heard, high vehicle costs, for instance. Some people think liability will be is one of those big challenges that hasn't been sort of solved yet or thought through. Lack of electric generating capacity. Anything of that list or any others that you know of that, really could hinder the deployment?
On the automated side of things, I don't see any of those as really significant barriers. Yes, there are still questions about liability, and this is, if the human's not doing the driving, who's responsible if there's a crash? Is it the person who sold you the vehicle? Is it the person who designed the automated driving system? I'm pretty sure we can work that out. And then what were the other ones you brought up?
The lack of electric generating capacity or just the high vehicle cost.
The vehicle cost issue was a big deal a few years ago because these vehicles are equipped with LiDAR sensors and they were massively expensive. But now that we're seeing more and more of these automated vehicles on the road and we're using LiDAR systems for other things too, beyond just that, they're being produced at scale. And so the cost is rapidly coming down. So yes, automated vehicles are more expensive significantly than a level 0 vehicle, but it's, I don't think, going to end up being prohibitive.
Okay, good. Turn the notch just more notch. So are CVs a good thing for society? Is this a development we should be rooting for and indeed, trying to help make it happen sooner, or should we really be kind of scared of this thing?
It depends on how they're deployed. So, if automated vehicles genuinely are safer than human drivers because they don't get drunk or high or tired or angry or distracted the way that human drivers do, and we can save lives, obviously that's a positive in everybody's book, especially given that we're seeing record numbers of deaths on our roadways right now. So that outcome could be stupendous. But there could be some other side effects depending on how we deploy things that are less positive. So, for example, you could see an increase in vehicle miles traveled, especially if these are not deployed just as like personally owned vehicles, but are deployed as fleets of vehicles that you hail a ride and it's owned by a company rather than by the individual. You could see a lot of what we call zero occupancy rides, where there's nobody in the vehicle and the vehicle's just circulating, waiting for someone to call for it. So you could see a lot more wear and tear on roads. If they're not electric, you could see more greenhouse gas emissions, even if they are electric, because right now most of our electricity is not generated from clean sources. You could still increase greenhouse gas emissions. So all of that could be a negative. It could also increase congestion. On the other hand, if the majority of vehicles on the road are connected and automated, they're able to communicate with each other and kind of sync up and move in a more coordinated fashion, you could decrease congestion. Or if the vehicles don't crash as much, there are fewer delays, you decrease congestion. So it really depends on how they're deployed. There are pluses and minuses all over with automated vehicles, which is why it's a fun policy area to get involved in.
And right, and again, the challenge would be to try to enact policy that helps us to achieve more of the good outcomes there.
Yes.
Mitigate the
without squelching innovation.
Right.
Yes.
without killing it. Yeah, yeah. Let me just mention one that you didn't hear is the equity
Mhm.
w- outcome. So many people interested in equity, rightfully so, in my opinion. Um, uh, Potential to help people with disabilities or low incomes or other kind of limitation. But on the other hand,
Ah,
go ahead.
once again, it cuts both ways.
Yeah.
So on the differently abled community, on the one hand, if you have a disability that prevents you from driving, you could suddenly have access to a technology that allows you to transport yourself basically anywhere you need to go without being dependent on somebody else's schedule. And that would be like indescribably freeing and exciting, right? On the other hand, if your disability means that you need assistance getting into and out of a vehicle, that could be pretty difficult. Especially if we automate public transit, so there's no longer a bus driver. Bus drivers do more than drive buses. They help people on and off if people need that kind of assistance. And if you've removed the driver, then who's helping those people get on and off of public transit? Do we need to develop other technologies that allow them on and off? Do we need to have a steward on all of our public transit to help with that, even if they're not driving? So there are a bunch of questions about how ultimately that would work out for people who need extra assistance in those cases. On the income piece, it kind of depends. If you are unable to afford a vehicle, but could afford rides in an automated vehicle now and again, that could be really helpful, but that depends on the pricing of the rides. And that will probably depend on the number of automated vehicles in your area. It could depend on the density in your area. So even now, if I took an Uber ride in a dense city, that's more cost effective for me than if I fly home to rural Oregon and try to do an Uber ride there. Because they need to charge a lot more for it to make financial sense to operate in the middle of nowhere. So it's a question. We don't know yet.
Good. It's sometimes good to raise questions and said, kind of, help the policy get us toward a better answer to that question out into the future. Good. Do you believe that once deployed, CAVs will make a massive change in U.S. society? I mean, one where, for good or for evil, things are going to change big time once we get a lot of CAVs out there, right?
Yes. So I don't think it would happen immediately. Like if suddenly level 4 automated vehicles became available for purchase tomorrow, you would still see a long period of transition where we still have regular human drivers on the road alongside the automated vehicles. So it wouldn't be an overnight transition. But I think in the long run, there will be significant societal changes. Some of that's just because you've now reduced the opportunity costs of travel, because now if you're going somewhere, you can do something else in the car rather than focus on the road and listen to the radio. You can work in your car, you can watch TV in your car, you can play with your children, all kinds of things. So if you lower the opportunity costs of travel, you could see a lot more travel. You could also see people shifting their housing patterns. So if you can start work the minute you get in your vehicle, you could live farther away from work. And
I don't know if you know the, the geography of Raleigh here, but I live in a random subdivision in North Raleigh. Why would I want to do that when I can, an hour north is Carr Lake? I can live lakefront and my workday starts, like you said, when I get in the vehicle. Who cares how long the commute is?
Yeah.
If I'm fired up on my laptop and I'm going. So real estate in North Raleigh all of a sudden got a lot less attractive.
yes. So, there could be really significant societal shifts for, you could see people leaving urban and suburban areas for ex-urban areas. And, that has all kinds of downstream consequences for housing markets and just markets in general. Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I do think it will be significant.
using that knowledge, you're going out and buying a whole bunch of lakefront property in an hour or two outside of the metro areas, right? So,
Joe, I work for a nonprofit.
oh, there's that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah. But maybe some of our participants here are doing that. Great. Yeah, big changes, but yeah, could go in lots of different ways. So let's talk about some of the more specific policies in the different states or the different experiments out there. Um, well, actually, can you give us a couple of the experiments in connected vehicles that you know of around the U.S. Lately?
Sure.
Yeah, and tell us how those have gone.
So connected vehicles has been an interesting field over the last couple of years. There's been a shift from using one communication protocol for these communications to a different protocol. So we used to use something called dedicated short range communication radios, DSRC. And then in 2019, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, issued a proposed rule that kind of forced the entire industry to shift from dedicated short-range communication radios to cellular communication. And so now there's a lot of work to be done to test and validate all of the kinds of communications we used to do with those DSRC radios, now doing all of that over again with cellular technology. So you're seeing a lot of people applying for waivers to do cellular technology in the transportation safety radio spectrum, and testing and validating cellular communications for vehicle to infrastructure communications. I think some of the most interesting pilots or deployments of connected vehicle technology going on right now are 3 states that have partnered with a company called Panasonic. So that's Colorado, Utah, and Georgia. And what they're doing is installing the kind of roadside units along roads that allow the vehicle to communicate with the infrastructure. And on the back end, they're creating this system to store and analyze all the data that the infrastructure owner operators, so connected or Colorado Department of Transportation, Utah Department of Transportation is getting from those roadside units and from communicating with vehicles, so we can actually act on it. So when you see that vehicles are consistently losing traction in a certain spot, or that there have been a lot of near misses in a certain spot, we can get that information and actually use it. Because I'm sure everybody watching knows a lot of public sector folks don't have great experience managing large amounts of data. It's an area that we are still catching up in. And I am thrilled that Colorado, Utah, and Georgia have taken the lead on piloting that and making that possible for us.
Good, good. How about something in the automated truck area? Because that's, we get media reports now and again, but what are you excited about out there in that area?
There's a ton of testing of automated trucks going on in Texas right now. That's been in partnership with a few of the universities there and with Texas Department of Transportation. They have a fantastic program down there. And so you've seen level 4 testing of automated trucks. So trucks that do not need a human driver even monitoring what they're doing. Now, there's always been a human driver in those vehicles, making sure that everything's okay, because we are still at the testing phase, but there have been real deliveries of, semi trucks worth of freight using automated vehicles down on that. I forget which interstate that is. Is that I-80?
Through Texas, that might be 10 or 20.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, it's awesome.
Good. And you mentioned before the what some people call the robo-taxi services, San Francisco.
Yes.
I think you said Arizona as well. Fill us in, generally on how they're doing.
So there have been pilots of colloquially robo-taxi fleets. Mostly by Waymo, which is a sister company of Google, and Cruise, which is a subsidiary of GM, in Chandler, Arizona, so near Phoenix, and in San Francisco. And they have been steadily progressing since about 2016. And they've now hit the point where in San Francisco, they have permission to offer rides for a fee to members of the public with no backup human drivers in the vehicles. So you could go to San Francisco and get a ride in an automated vehicle. Now, that said, they just got permission for that in August. And a week later, a Cruise vehicle crashed into a fire truck that was on its way to respond to an emergency. And the public in San Francisco and the city government and the county government put a lot of pressure on Cruise to reduce the number of vehicles it had operating in the city by half. So I think they went from 1,000 to 500. So there's some question about whether those vehicles are really ready for prime time yet. Some people in San Francisco really seem to love them. Some people cannot stand them. And they're definitely still encountering scenarios they're not prepared for. So I think over the summer, there was a video that went viral of an automated robo-taxi driving into a construction site and getting stuck in wet cement.
Yeah, I remember that one. Not a good look.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll learn not to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me remind our participants, if you got a question for Allie, please put it in the Q&A. I see one question and one comment to this point. If we have more, please do. We'll get to those in a couple minutes. State policy and state DOT. I guess what I know of it, which is very little, but my characterization would be the 50 states are all over, a huge range from states that have really almost done nothing to state like California that's on it pretty much day to day and trying to stay ahead of it. So is that fair? Is that?
Yes, I'd say that's fair. I would say maybe like 1/10 of our states are really, really on it and have detailed regulations and are pushing for like comprehensive policies related to automated vehicles. You have maybe like 25% that are doing absolutely nothing. And then the big majority in the middle are staying informed, watching what's happening, but they're in kind of wait and see mode.
Yeah, North Carolina may be on the leading edge of that of that large swath. We we have legislation, which in my opinion is pretty good, but
Mhm.
they have not done much beyond that. Yeah, we got a committee we're watching, but so maybe a little bit on the leading edge of. So does AASHTO have sort of model legislation? Is there is there something you all would encourage us to do to be ready?
I would say Astro doesn't have model legislation. Um, but I would say watching and staying informed is appropriate for a lot of states. If you are able to get funding for a pilot or a demonstration project, I think that's really valuable because it means that there are folks within your DOT who have genuine hands-on experience with the technology. And that's immensely helpful when it comes to making decisions about future deployments. I think ultimately every state is going to have developers coming knocking on their doors saying, here's legislative changes we want, here's potentially changes to infrastructure that we want. And it's better if the DOTs are prepared when they show up.
Oh, for sure that, yep. And then the same thing on the local level, cities, counties, you mentioned already the case of San Francisco where, they made a change, they didn't shut it down. But what's as you travel and talk with people around the country at the local level, what's the range look like there?
Oh, huge range.
Right.
So you have some cities that outright ban automated vehicles. You have some cities that are throwing open the gates and saying, come here, you can do whatever you want. I think you also see a lot of cities that have had some experience with the influx of ride-hailing vehicles or with shared scooters, shared bikes, learning from that experience and trying to apply the lessons of that experience to future robo-taxi deployments, which I think is great. Learning from our experiences with emerging technology is good, and I'm glad that they're sharing those learnings with everybody. So it really runs the whole gamut. I think in many cases, what I've seen is that cities are very interested in getting data from the automated vehicles. And since automated vehicles in these pilots are not yet connected, that can be pretty challenging. It's also challenging sometimes for cities to parse through the volume of data that they could be getting from these vehicles. So that ends up being a point of negotiation between them and any developers looking to test in their cities.
It seems a fair ask to me, if you're coming to test in our city or our state for that matter, that we get a look at the good data. Sure.
Well, as a person who worked for an infrastructure owner operator and supports many of them now, I certainly agree with you. But the developers don't love opening up the hood that way.
Yeah, but well, okay, well, and we'll see how things develop, but that's that just off the top, that seems pretty fair to me.
Well, and we have not been consistently able to get data that I think should be handed over right off the bat. So for example, we need to collect data in the event of a crash. There have been a handful of crashes now involving level 2, at least, automated technology. Tesla's the big example that makes the news frequently. And they have consistently refused to share data that we know the vehicle collects from the 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after a crash, which makes it really difficult for us to evaluate whether the technology was in any way at fault for that crash or if it was the human driver.
Right. And it also occurs to me that the public sector, city, county, state, could help too. As you say, some of those crashes are not the fault of the technology, and as a bit of an independent analysis could bring that out rather than the media's interpretation, which they're going to go where they go.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, and I think the places that have seen the most success with their deployments and pilots so far have been places where the automated vehicle developers and the governments involved have really joined hands and come at this with like a partnership mindset. But that can be challenging to establish based on the political environment and the attitudes of the people involved and the public acceptance. It's challenging.
One politics here. Let me get your reaction to this. My interpretation so far is that the CEV policy has not been a partisan issue. There's blue states and places against it and for it, and there's red states and places against it and for it. And if there's a pattern to that, I haven't seen it. And I take that to be a generally good thing. Do you see it the same way?
I think so. I need to be careful how I say this. You're going to get me in trouble. You see people on the cities that kind of lean left, more concerned about some of the downstream social impacts, things like contributing to sprawl, contributing to greenhouse gas emission, and therefore more concerned about establishing upfront policies that could curb the potentially negative impacts of automated vehicles than you tend to see in more right-leaning areas. So there is some difference in the policy approaches on the different sides of the political spectrum. And that does impact how those pilots occur in those different cities.
Fair enough. Good. Appreciate that. We do have some questions in now. Let's get some of those. An anonymous person put in the Q&A a link to a PBS segment on North Carolina A&T University's autonomous vehicle program. And they, Allie, this for you and for other participants, North Carolina A&T in Greensboro is a really good program in AVs, and they're just about to start a test of one of their vehicles on the streets of Greensboro. So point you to that link, and for everybody here, that it's good to know that they're out there, I think, kind of on the leading edge of the technology development. Alex is asking, are AV or C vehicles susceptible to hacking or hostile takeovers? What do you think?
They absolutely are. Anything that has, computer technology is susceptible to hacking and takeover. And this is an area where I think you're starting now to see a lot of coordination between the various levels of government to develop better cybersecurity protocols on both connected vehicles and on automated vehicles. So, for example, on the CV side of things, I'm involved in supporting a federal deployment plan for connected vehicle technology nationwide. And one of the topic areas that we are planning to spend the most time on is developing cybersecurity protocols over the next couple of years. On the AV side, I know it's something that the automated vehicle developers talk about a lot. And they have a couple of standing committees between all of the companies that are developing automated technology that address this and allow them to share information about potential vulnerabilities. That said, your vehicles on the road today are probably susceptible to hostile takeover. My Subaru Crosstrek is susceptible to hostile takeover. So we still have a ways to go there.
Yep. deal. Thanks. Alex also points out that NCDOT is piloting a level 3 AV called Cassie that's run around in several different places. Alex is pointing out that it's at UNC Charlotte through the fall.
Oh, is this one of those shuttles, an
Yes.
automated shuttle?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep. Me and a few of our interns here at DOT rode in it in May when it was here at a nearby park. So yeah,
Awesome.
cool experience. If you get in the Charlotte area, get a chance to do that. It's an AV. It's cool. We got a question from an anonymous person about how are the states handling liability, especially as technology reduces the need for someone in the driver's seat. I know the answer to that in North Carolina, but what do you think, Allie? What's the sort of majority trend across the country?
So initially, during the first wave of states passing legislation related to automated vehicles, the trend was towards requiring $5 million umbrella insurance from the developer doing the testing. I think more often now you see it around 1 million, but most states that allow testing, or I should say most states that have laws on the books that address testing, do require some kind of liability insurance from the company doing the testing.
It's per incident?
No, it's umbrella.
Okay. Yeah, North Carolina law is that the vehicle owner is responsible, and yeah, when we get more, presumably we'll be investigating some type of requirement like that. So
Yeah.
good deal. Mickey asks, do the initial costs of AVs, do you anticipate more AV trips from mobility service companies? Subscription service, basically. Good question.
So it's a great question. I think it depends on where you are. So if you are in an urban or suburban area and there's density enough that the fleet owner could make back that money, then yes, I think you'll see a drop in personal vehicle ownership, and you'll see more people using ride-hailing automated vehicles. If you live in a rural area, automation does nothing to change density. It doesn't change how economics works. So it still probably isn't going to make sense for there to be ride-hailing services out in places where there are miles between homes. And there you're more likely to end up seeing a slower adoption of automated vehicles, but you could also see more personally owned automated vehicles. And the benefits for people in rural areas could be really substantial because they're the ones who spend the most amount of time driving places.
Good. Yep. And one of our stalwarts, Ed Johnson, asked a good question as far as sharing data, getting feedback from AVs and CAVs on wherever road signs and markings need improvement should be mandatory, he thinks. What do you agree with that?
I have not heard of anybody making it mandatory. I will say we already have state DOTs that have put LiDAR on state vehicles and camera systems, the kinds of sensors that you see on an automated vehicle, but they put it on a vehicle driven by a human, just fleet vehicles, and they drive those around on the roads, and that's part of how they gather data on where they need to do maintenance. I think one of the things we would love on the IOO side to see is if we have vehicles already on the roads with that technology on board, getting that data would be wonderful.
And we might have the opposite problem. We might be swimming in data all of a sudden, right?
And this is why it's so wonderful that we have Colorado and Utah and Georgia working on creating a kind of data architecture that hopefully the rest of us can learn from and model.
We're just a couple minutes left, and I've got sort of one more of a standard question I like to ask at the end of each of these conversations is for advice for our younger members, which I hope, I expect we have some student members listening in today who are interested in being a CEV professional at some point. I mean, basically joining your ranks. Is that a good way to go? Do you see that being a good professional choice? And if so, what would you advise those students to do out in the future to get ready to be a professional in the CAV world?
I did not intend to end up in this job, so I can't tell you what to do really if you are planning that years in advance. I stumbled here. But I have to tell you, I love it. I love my job. I loved working on this kind of stuff when I was at Oregon DOT. I love it now that I work for the Association of State Departments of Transportation. I would definitely recommend doing internships. I think those are more useful for your career development and making connections than basically anything else you can do in school. I think if your university offers transportation policy classes, those are great. If you don't have a technical background, taking some intro tech classes is a great idea, because a lot of my job, at least, involves translating between politicians and engineers. And I don't need to be fluent in either of those, but I need to be conversant in both. So anything you can do to help yourself gain some familiarity in both of those worlds is a great idea.
Those must be interesting conversations. That's those
I
two
love it.
translating there must be challenging at some point, though. Ellie, we've got 1 minute left. Any last thoughts? Anything I missed or that you'd like to leave us with? You sound basically positive going forward on CEVs.
Yeah, I think don't be fooled by the hype. I think cautious optimism is warranted.
Great. Let's end it there at 1 o'clock on my dial. Ellie, thanks so much. Always, I feel like we could go on a couple more hours. Or, this is awesome stuff to me. But really appreciate it. And thank you to our participants that were here today, and especially after rescheduling. I think we had a good crowd, and hopefully this was interesting to you. We'll be back in October with another conversation. I think bus rapid transit is going to be our topic in October. So we keep it moving around, right? Look forward to that. You'll be seeing announcements on that soon. And in the meantime, keep talking transportation. Andy, back to you for the last word.
I think that about covers it. Again, like I said, thanks everybody for attending today, and we'll send out the evaluation PDH forms later on this afternoon, and look for the announcement for our next conversation in transportation sometime in the upcoming weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Good. Take care, y'all. Ellie, once again, thanks so much, and rescheduling particularly. I think that was well done. We snuck it in there.
We did. Thank you. That was really fun.
Good. And seriously, I had to go a couple hours. Let's at a conference at some point. I'm sure. Let's find a place and grab a beverage and keep talking CUV.